Welcome everybody. We have a very special week for you. We have our special guest, Josh Perry, who is a professional BMX rider, TBI brain tumor survivor. He recently went to our Atlanta clinic and underwent a full evaluation. He developed his passion for BMX riding in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. What an awesome place. I love
Beautiful.
teaching there, where he was born and raised. When he was 17, he moved to Greenville, North Carolina to go after his career as a professional BMX athlete and ride with some of the best riders in the world, like Ryan Nyquist and Dave Mira. Josh won his first pro contest and best trick contest. It means he has an amazing cerebellum. In 2009, winning him a brand new Harley Davidson motorcycle. Following the big success, he made his first appearance in the X Games and continued to compete in the Do Action Sports Tour. At age 21, in April 2010, Josh had surgery in order to remove a brain tumor taking up the entire left side of his brain. This was a major turning point that put him on track to learn about taking better care of his brain and body and nutrition. In November 2012, Josh had gamma knife radiation treatment, actually pioneered by one of our friends, Chris Duma, to treat two new tumors. This was a new eye-opener experience for Josh and his health, which led him to look deeper into holistic health and nutrition.
It's amazing. Welcome, Josh. And I have a question for people who don't know what BMX is, because we have a lot of people who like different age ranges. It's bike racing. And so you had bikes and motorcycles and all the things as a neurosurgical ICU nurse that were like, ouch. Did you ever crash?
Yeah,
Hard.
I mean, of course. And first of all, thank you guys so much for your time, for having me on. Like I said before, it's been 5 years in the making to be able to have a conversation with the both of you. And I'm
Awesome.
expecting it, so I'm beyond grateful. And yeah, right. That's something you accept from a very young age. I mean, whether you're going to advance to where I've wanted to go or not, it's just you fall down, and that's just part of life. So on bike, it's just a little bit more risk. But I should clarify too. So with BMX, it's like a bicycle.
Right.
20-inch rims, unlike 26-inch rims or bigger for mountain bikes. But what I competed in is the tricks, like X Games, like backflips, tricks. I didn't ever race. I found out about racing later on, so it would have been a better development to the fundamentals had I gone that route. But I always had to clarify that. So I do like the tricks and the more crazy, riskful things.
Right. So interesting. So that's already a brain risk. That's a very big risk for a brain. And then you developed a tumor. That's pretty scary. So tell us about that. What happened?
Yeah, a little bit. So thankfully I had fallen and hit my head. It was March 2010, and I was trying a new trick outside of the foam pit. So the foam pit is a big, long rectangle full of foam blocks that we built a ramp into, and kind of spilled out technology from gymnastics so we can safely try a trick. So I wanted to do this trick at the next contest. So I got to try it at home on the real ramp first. And I overcompensated the rotation and the flip of the trick, and on my side, hit my head, get knocked out. Now, a year prior, I had gone to the emergency room, urgent care, multiple times of these headaches and migraines that lead me to losing my vision and throwing up. And they deny me every time I ask for a scan. Like, I didn't care what kind of scan, just something. They say, no, you're healthy, you're young, you just have headaches, pretty normal in this country. Here's some painkillers, come back to me more. So moving to March 2010, that crash literally saved my life because it forced them to give me an MRI. And I remember driving there just thinking, oh, I hit my head, I got knocked out. This is just evaluation of the brain post, concussion. Didn't think anything of it. Just how long till I can ride again, And I'm sitting there waiting for the results to come back. And I'll never forget, like, the doctor walks in and he says, we have your report. There's no swelling, there's no bleeding. So, the concussion, that takes some time off, but that's checked out. But there's something in your brain that shouldn't be there. And I remember laughing out loud and asking, like, what do you mean there's something in my brain? Like, I didn't put anything in there. Like, how could there be anything in there? I got a skull protecting it. And he followed up with, there's a large mass taking over a good portion left side of your brain. We don't know if it's benign or cancerous. Would you know if you want a shot at preserving your life, you have to have surgery immediately, and you may still not wake up, and you'll probably never ride your bike again. And I'm by myself. I just turned 21 in November prior, and I'm just thinking, what? Like, I just heard cancer, never gonna ride your bike again, you may die. And everything just started shutting down. The only way I can explain it is I just felt broken, just kind of like you don't ever expect that at any age, let alone when you're 21, like a few years into living your dream, and then thinking you're just getting a concussion for it. And then you have cancer, you have a tumor, whether it's benign or not.
That's crazy.
So you actually were how old when you were
23,
diagnosed with cancer?
Mine was not nearly as, they didn't tell me I was going to die, but I remember hearing the word cancer. My experience was a little bit different. I refused to hear it. It was so surreal that I was like, what are you talking about? I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I couldn't take it in. And I just thought they were insane. And I just kept, it's such a surreal experience. But to hear you're going to die, I didn't even hear I was going to die. And I went into a deep depression. It was such a weird shutting down process, just like you said. It's like everything just begins to collapse on itself. I think at that age, you think you're invincible. And when that sudden realization that you're not only not invincible, but you're actually fairly fragile. I mean, everything could shut down. Is such a bizarre realization at that. We just don't expect that at that age. You just don't expect it. But then in your case, to hear that you could die is, I think, I can't even imagine, especially for a young guy who's riding bikes and racing. I mean, you're just like at the prime,
Well, and for those of you listening to this, Google Josh Perry BMX, and you'll see the amazing tricks that he can do.
And so you had gotten all this attention for being, just really at the top of your game, and now to hear you're not going to ride again had to be pretty crazy.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't anything I ever it never went through my head on the way there or sitting there waiting like this may happen. And of course, fear set in, anxiety, stress, worry, all these things. And then the victim mentality, I literally was thinking like, why is this happening to me? Like, what did I do to deserve this? Am I such a bad person that like this is going to happen now? And it was a pretty quick transition from diagnosis to surgery. It was about a week and a half, 2 weeks, where I went to Duke University and saw Dr. Alan Friedman. And 3 things that helped transition me from fear to fuel of just, no, like I treat it like an injury. Like how long, when can I get back on my bike? What do I do? It was my mom's story battling colon cancer, and she's alive and well today, but I saw her go through that, and she hid a lot of that from me when I first left home so I could pursue BMX. The BMX community that I created a name for myself worldwide let me know, like, hey, we got your back. We're thinking of you. You got this. Just stay strong. Whether they knew me or not, they just heard of me. And then learning Lance Armstrong's story. To me, that was, in BMX, you see a trick done for the first time, and everyone else starts doing it. It's like this, you see it, then you can do it. And so seeing Lance Armstrong, another cyclist, wheels on the ground for the most part, a little different than my style of riding, but to me, he went through brain, lung, and testicular cancer. To me at the time, I was like, hey, I'm going through a third of this, and they don't even know if it's cancer. It's like he had cancer. Like he did this, came back to the level of riding he did, and no matter what people's opinion is of how he did that,
right.
To get to that level after going through something like that is unfathomable. And I'm just going through the brain tumor of all things that he went through. It's like,
so you got a mentor to watch.
Exactly.
In essence. Yeah. We think that's really powerful.
Yeah, his mother who went through cancer and Lance Armstrong.
Right. So that's a really powerful thing we tell people to do.
Support of
your
community.
Yeah, huge.
Is really important.
So he had the psychology, so we talk about biology, psychology, your social circle, and your spiritual circle. And you definitely had the psychology and the social circle down. I don't know about the biology, even because you were young and you were fit and you were eating, from what I understand, you decided to start eating really healthy and pay attention to what you were doing. And I don't know what the spiritual circle was, but you had those 3 down, which is really important. And that's what we talk about, is those 4 circles. They're like 4 wheels on a car, right? Mm-hmm. So one of those wheels is flat and it's a little harder to recover, right? It's hard to drive the car.
And that's what's funny, because I know you guys are really big about community, and that's one of the biggest things I learned about holistic health in general is all these communities, they have that. They're not isolated. They're not living in a box with no light. Like they're enjoying themselves, and it's contagious, that energy. And
absolutely.
It was after diagnosis I got into nutrition, but it's funny because ever since I was younger, and my parents, my family always were like, work hard for the life you want. Anything is possible. Just put the work in. And there is like BMX and sports in general teaching me like there is no failure. You fall down, like audit what happened, reverse engineer the path to success, try again. So Now my biggest passion is mindset. It's not any of the things I've gone through, brain tumors or nutrition. It's literally the psychology. And I have a lot of great virtual mentors that I refer to them as virtual mentors. And you guys are some of them that I've been able to connect with, and which is amazing. But that's the first thing I talk about now. Like whether someone's like, hey man, like how do I do this trick, or how do I, change up my diet? It's let's figure out why you want to do that. What's the purpose behind it? And really let's figure out your psychology, your subconscious beliefs. And it's funny seeing, like, I'm 30 now, reflecting the last 10 years, even like how big of a factor that was, the success I had. I didn't really know it. It was embedded in me subconsciously. And now I'm like very aware of it and trying to learn more and share more of that, because I think that's the biggest piece, is that mindset.
Did you go back to riding after the brain surgery, the first one?
5 weeks later.
5 weeks later.
Wow.
And what did the neurosurgeon say about that?
So Dr. Friedman was like, yeah, it's about 4 weeks for the skull to fuse back together. And I was like, whoa, I thought I was at a year best case scenario. I didn't do much research. I was just, let's get in. And he's like, let's take another week. We'll just see how it goes. So week 4 went in, the 4 titanium screws holding the skull back to place, or everything settled well, fused back. So let's take another week, just to make sure you're good. Helmet, pads, back on the ramps, week 5. 2 months later, I was competing again.
That's crazy. I want to mention something.
That is insane.
That is insane, yeah. But he's young and he's, passionate.
Yeah.
I want to touch on something you said, because it's been a huge thing in my life. The falling. You said you fall down, you get back up. So I practice martial arts, and it was so powerful for me. And why are you laughing at me? As always, he's laughing at me. He has this thing about laughing at me.
I'm thinking everybody's insane now.
Right.
Brain surgery, because people don't get brain surgery is a traumatic brain injury. Somebody's messing with the physical functioning of your brain. I'm looking at your scans, and I can actually see where the tumor was, where they took it out.
Yeah.
And for him to green light you back on your bike.
Yeah, but there is a psychological
risky.
component.
If you watch the videos, how many times before the first surgery do you think you fell and hit your head?
So this is what Dr. Ali and I were going over. My report was, I was like, there's not enough space. Let's talk about this. So up until that point, that I can vividly remember was 1, 2. There was 4 from the time I started riding, about 12 or 13 till that point, that I know I got knocked out for sure. One of them I was 16 actually with a seizure from it that my friend informed me of after I woke up. But now that I've learned a lot more about concussions and how you don't need to get knocked out to get a concussion, or an MRI can still clear you to be concussion free, like, man, I've hit my head quite a bit to where I saw stars, or I was just like, and that hurt, and I had a headache for a day or so.
Oh.
So up until that point, I'd say comfortably, I would say I had about 7 times I hit my head, whether I got knocked out or I hit it hard. And that was a big wake up call, was, hey, you got a brain tumor. And I was like, let's learn about brain health.
Wow. When we come back, we are going to talk about more of the impact of traumatic brain injury. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're here with Josh Perry, BMX biker champion, brain tumor survivor, brain trauma survivor. And you were just telling us in the break that, was it after a year coming back?
Yeah, surgery was April 2010, and this was about July, I believe it was July 2011, Ocean City, Maryland.
What happened?
So we had a contest back then called the Dew Tour. That's another story. But they built a course on the beach in Ocean City, and it'd been a little over a year. And like Dave Mears said, you do the homework, the test is easy. I was doing the homework, I was practicing every day, training, started learning about nutrition, drinking more water, less sugar, less alcohol, things like that. And I was just ready. It was just practice. And I was going around one of the lines in the ramps to get the feel for the route I want to take during my contest run. And I came up short on this ramp. So it was a 6-foot ramp, and I was about, I think, like 8 feet above that. And I was coming, my back tire tagged, and I went straight over the bars to my face, like the left side of my face on the flat bottom. So I was about 8 feet when my bike hit, and I was on top of it, straight to the ground. And my friends and the medics on the sidelines, watching, so they heard me snoring as soon as I hit. It was actually on the perimeter ramps of the course. They said I hit so hard, I was snoring instantly. The medics rolled me over when they got to me, and they said my heart had stopped about 30, 45 seconds. And I actually woke up in the ambulance throwing up, and I just was so confused and in so much pain that I had like a huge lump down my right hand. My knuckle was broken, and I just was like, what happened? Throwing up after. So that was about 14 months after brain surgery.
Oh God.
There are so many pieces to that story people wouldn't understand are important. Like brain surgery all by itself has general anesthesia. People have general anesthesia. So children who have general anesthesia have a higher incidence of learning problems. Adults who have it have a higher incidence of dementia. There's controversy about that. There's studies for and against, but general anesthesia is generally not good for your brain. So we have trauma, we have the tumor, general anesthesia, and then your heart stops. And any form of anoxia where you don't get oxygen to your brain
Because your heart stops.
Heart stops can damage your brain.
So you've got multiple insults.
Multiple, and your scans show it. But the exciting thing that I want people to really get is when you get serious about brain health, that you can very often make it better. But then when did the tumors come back?
So that was July 2011. It was September 2012. Just one of the yearly MRIs showed a small, like a blueberry-sized mass in the front and the rear of the same area the original tumor was located in. Dr. Friedman said it was due to the complications. Once they got in, the tumor was wrapped around the optic nerve and an artery. And so it was actually 6-hour surgery. It was supposed to be like 4. And I remember meeting him 5 years later again, and he just didn't miss a beat. He remembered everything. And he said it was because of that. So that's when the 2 regrowths came back, was 2012.
So let's just pause for a minute and talk about the impact to society of traumatic brain injury. One of the things that shocked me. So I'm an Army-trained psychiatrist. I trained at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. And when I trained in 1982, we had a lot of Vietnam veterans. And so we actually had talked about traumatic brain injury and the impact it could have on your mental health. But I had no idea that literally 40% of the patients that come to Amen clinics have had a significant traumatic brain injury at some point in their past. It is a major cause of psychiatric illness, and nobody knows about it. It's a major cause of anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, ADHD, school failure, drug and alcohol abuse, homelessness, incarceration. When you damage the brain, and I think most people believe your brain is involved in everything you do, how you think and feel and act, and how well, Tana and I get along. Your brain is involved in everything. If you hurt it, it's going to hurt your ability to be your best self.
Yeah, for sure.
And you seem pretty healthy, and you seem, I haven't been there through the whole healing process, obviously. I'm sure there were a lot of ups and downs. But you seem like you've taken a very proactive approach to getting well. I've heard you mention several things, and you seem very purposeful. And being purposeful is a big part of it. And as we mentioned before, you mentioned the falling piece. Falling is just part of it, and you get back up. And I wanted to touch on that before. We talk about that in martial arts a lot. And for women, that's a hard thing. We want to be perfectionists. And in BMX, maybe you do too, but you can't be. So falling is it's an important part of learning strategy. It's like built in. You fall, it's not considered failure. It's like, it's just, you only fail if you don't get back up. And that was such a huge awakening for me. It was like, you're supposed to fall. You're just supposed to learn how to get up safely and quickly, right? And move on. And you learn from it. And that was huge. That was a huge metaphor for me for life. And it was really important.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you said a bunch of things, and that come to mind is I remember, when I first heard Dr. Amen speak at IAN, it was brain envy. And so I remember being on that path, and it started with, watching a documentary that led me here on YouTube and Google and all over the place. And then I found Dr. Perlmutter's book, Brain Drain, just before I enrolled at IAN. And I was like, man, I started making massive shifts. and Dr. Amen's work, and then Mark Sisson spoke in there, and then
Mhm.
Dr. Mark Hyman. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, all this stuff makes sense. So I was just like, let's be proactive. I was still in a fearful state, and learning a little bit about epigenetics and the ability we have to make changes with our health. I was like, man, like, let's just keep doing this. But then as I've gone on, I've learned about mindset being my favorite thing to talk about, and really just perspective and context is essential to life. That's one of my biggest beliefs, and my perspective was altered by the first brain tumor. And then it's obviously shifted a lot since then. It's progressed. And then you mentioned purpose. And a friend of mine told me a story. He was at a job one day before he started his business, and the boss was like, "Hey, Isaac, are you on self or are you on purpose today?" And
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I have a bracelet that says off self on purpose. And the
That's good.
third diagnosis just 2 years ago was one of those wake up calls that was like, there was no feeling sorry. There was no feeling anything. Of course, there was a little bit of frustration, but it was literally like, what can I do to benefit from this experience? And how can I help people? And that's when I stopped competing, was 2017. Because I was like, man, like our sport's not that big. If it was like NBA, I have a bigger reach, but no one cares if I go compete or not. They just care what I represent. And let's take all that energy, time, and focus and put it on purpose to serve and support. And let's create more abundance for everyone. And that's just where my mindset is now. It's like, what can I do to bring value? Instead of hearing people like, how can I, how can I learn this? Or how can you help me? It's like, how can I help you? And in doing so, it's just a byproduct that, more opportunity comes to me, more opportunity to help people. And then just, it's really fascinating how that your world shifts with these perspectives.
It does. Yeah. That's actually fantastic. I love that. Are you on self or are you on purpose? That's fantastic. I really like that. One thing I do when something's going really badly and I've had to train myself, it didn't come naturally, train myself to do when something's really bad or I'm really nervous. And I love this because what you're describing is what we call the warrior mindset. You have a warrior mindset, not a warrior, but a warrior mindset. And that's really great. What I like to do is I ask myself a series of questions. The minute something's going wrong, I built it in just like I built in, I like the ICU trauma nurse training. It's what can I learn from this? What can I be happy about? What can I be grateful about? And what can I be purposeful with? Right. So when something's really going bad, like if you can instantly do that, it just instantly shifts your mindset to, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me, to what can I be grateful for? What can I learn? What can I, how can I be purposeful? And it's like, it just instantly puts you in that warrior, proactive state of mind. So it's a really important thing, but it takes training,
Yeah, it takes time.
If the training is hard, the battle is easy, right?
So when we come back, so we've talked a little bit about Josh's story. We've talked about the impact of traumatic brain injury. Now what I want to do in the next 2 podcasts is talk about, well, what are the big lessons you've learned? What is it that you really want to share
And what do you do differently
with our audience? And what questions might you have for us after you've gone through the evaluation process? I also want to hear when you saw your scan, what that was like. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are back with Josh Perry, our BMX racer and, trick rider actually, and brain cancer survivor. And what a story. This has been a fantastic story, Josh, and I love this. And we want to start with a question and a challenge for our listeners and our viewers. And so we want you to post, if you will, what brain challenges have you had and what have you been, let's say, I don't want to say feeling sorry for yourself about, but what have you been struggling with? Let's put it that way. I certainly struggled in the past with having cancer. You certainly struggled when you first heard about cancer, but you have been such a warrior in turning it around. And I want to hear, what have you guys been struggling with and what can you do to make it better? So at the end, post that for us. You can tag us or you can go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com and we'll read that out loud and we'll read your questions. But welcome back, Josh. And this has just been a fantastic story. So you want to talk about?
Before we jump in, last night, our three of our 5 grandchildren came over to the house, and Haven just turned 1, and Haven is now
Oh my
walking.
gosh, so cute.
But in the process of walking, every 7, 8, maybe 10 steps, she falls on her butt. And she doesn't get discouraged
No, she
by falling
laughs.
on her butt. She laughs and then she gets back up. And I imagine in learning to be a world-class BMXer, is falling is part of it. And when you fall, it's not failure, as you were saying in martial arts. It's just part of the process. And to see her giggle and just be so happy with
Because
herself.
she's learning every time she does it what to do better next time. So, yeah, it's great.
All right. Big lessons from your experience. I love that you went to IIN. It's called the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, where I'm one of the teachers. It's really a great course to teach people that food is medicine or it's poison.
Right, or not.
Or not. Yeah, Tana and I often say the weapons of mass destruction.
Everything you put on the end of your fork matters.
That ISIS has nothing on our food industry, that we can do so much better. So, big lessons. What comes to mind when you hear that question?
There's three that I love sharing, and I'll say those after. But you mentioned a few things I wanted to talk about, and like the whole falling aspect. I've learned that the desire to accomplish something, you don't see failure because you're so focused on the desire, and that you don't have the outside influence of society, brainwashing to a degree, but like subconsciously programming you to like, oh, like let's not try again because I'm afraid that what they may think, or I'm afraid of, like, you don't have those blocks. So from a young age, learning about that subconsciously, and then through BMX or any sport, injuries happen, but it allows you to progress throughout life for maybe larger events that take place. It helps you a lot. And that's what I've seen. I've had a couple friends and family members take their own lives. I've been through my own battles of depression. Like, there's so many things, but had I not had that foundation, I don't believe I would have been able to get through them as strongly as I have because of that perspective. And so that was one thing I wanted to mention. And then IAN was more of me just freaking out of all this conflicting information I was learning, and really wanting to be the best version of myself and do the best I could. And thankfully I got into Dr. Perlmutter's work straight before IAN, I think the month before, but I was just like, he's talking about eating more fat. These people are saying fat causes cancer and heart disease. What do I do? And so IAN was that I talked to a few people, I graduated, like, man, it's going to be great. The first thing Joshua said when we're in there was, we're not here to teach you what to think, we're here to teach you how to think. And I remember getting just like pissed off, where I was like, what? Like I paid all this money to learn, but it ended up being great. And it made sense as we evolved. So, and that's obviously where I found Dr. Amen's work, and now here. So I'm really grateful for that. Now, the three things that I've summed my 30 years up into, and number one, I talked about this earlier, but perspective and context is essential in life. And I argue that gratitude is the key to abundance, because whatever your belief is of that gave you life and everything around you, if you're not grateful for even the pain you're dealing with, how can you expect to have more? You're a living human being. Some people don't wake up. That's a fact. We've all experienced that, but you woke up, you have the chance to make your tomorrow better. And then that leads into number two, health is internal. I learned that the hard way. But I've learned that it's not just what's on the outside. It's not what's on the scale. I was a picture-perfect example of health to the doctors. And I thought they know all. I'm just a civilian. What do I know? And it happened to be something internally wrong with me. Thanks to hitting my head again, MRI, I found that out. I don't suggest people have to hit their head to learn, but that's what did it for me. And then number three is our reality is the manifestation of our choices. Choices in thoughts, beliefs, doubt, self-talk, food, sleep, or lack thereof, like all these things. Literally, our reality is based on the choices we make every single day. Mm-hmm. And it may not happen right away. It may not be easy. But if we want to create a new reality to live in, then we have to make changes. Otherwise, it's just, to me, it's not possible.
Absolutely true. I love that. I also believe that I believe people have to be careful. We just did a podcast on language, because what you're thinking, it all starts with your thinking, like you just said. The decisions you make, what you think leads to the decisions you make, and that becomes your reality. But when you put words to it, it becomes your experience. It becomes, when you label something, it becomes the experience you have. And so when you think something and then you just start saying it over and over and over, it seals it. It becomes the experience you had, right? And it may not have even been that, but you labeled it that, and now you've just sealed it. So how we say things.
Dr. Joe Dispenza or Nicole LaPera.
Yeah, Dr. Joe Dispenza really well.
Yeah, Joe and I are friends. Yeah. Joe has referred many patients to the clinics.
So I got into his workshop about 3 years ago, and that's when I started learning about subconscious and like all these things. I was like, man, like at first I was like, I don't understand any of it. And then now I'm just so into it. I'm like, doesn't matter what someone else talk about. I'm always thinking like, well, I wonder what their experience has been to lead into that thought or
Right.
that program and things like that. So
Yeah, I think
just
your
wanted
subconscious doesn't have a sense of humor, so you have to be careful what you put there. So
yeah.
be careful how you talk to it.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned thoughts creating our emotions and our experiences, and I know Dr. Joe talks a lot about that. But something a friend shared with me that's helped me a lot, and I've shared with other people, is something called the TEAR method, and it stands for thoughts, emotions, actions, and results, or I like to put reality. So if you start with an emotion, stress or fear, whatever those are common, what are your thoughts that are triggering that emotion? That's creating your emotional state.
Right.
That's leading you to taking action one way or the other,
Right.
manifesting a result. So if you don't like the reality you have, well, let's change our thoughts, create a new emotional being. Instead of sitting on the couch or being in bed sad for ourselves, we'll get up and take an action.
Right.
You can't help but getting the outcome. That's just something that's helped me a lot. Whenever you mentioning your go-to, that's just one of mine that I love sharing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yep.
So when you saw your scan, what was that like, going to the Atlanta clinic, seeing Dr. Munir Ali? Walk me through that a little bit.
So Dr. Ryan Lowry and I, we had a lot of chats beforehand. We were going over what we expected to see. We were prepared. And then going through the initial evaluation, that they call like the breakdown and debrief, after all the scans, we did a third additional scan with exogenous ketones. But really, like, here it is, like that anxious excitement feeling. And then like, my thoughts were, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And Dr. Ali explained a lot of the changes I've made in the last 4 or 5 years have probably helped that, of course. But it still was like, man, like seeing a hole in your brain, even though it's not a legit hole.
Right. It feels like a hole, right?
You're like, you can't help but feel crushed a little bit. You're like, man, this is real.
That's how
like,
I felt. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a perfectionist.
It wasn't bad. So it was a mixture of feelings, and I prepared myself. I've seen a lot of the different scans, and I was like, all right. But still,
but see, that's good, because that's the thing that makes you want to be better. That's the athlete in you. Yeah. That's the thing I can improve on. I mean, that's what I do. It's like, I'm always looking for the thing I can do better. How can I like keep making it better? And that's not a bad thing. So as long as you don't let it get you discouraged, that's okay. So,
well, I tell people whatever we see is good news, because you have what you have. And if we can make it better, if it's awesome, just keep doing what you're doing. But if it's not awesome, we need to ramp up our rehabilitation and our training.
And it gives us a map.
And so that's what's exciting.
It's basically giving us a starting point of how to move forward. Ryan and I were filming just like takeaways beforehand. Like, what do we expect? Thoughts. I was like, man, like, I'm scared, but I know this is going to be great because it's going to show me really what's going on. And then we can make changes thereafter to help improve. So
exactly.
You can't go somewhere you want to go unless you know where you're starting.
Exactly.
And just the help with that.
And what changes did you make since seeing your scan?
So started with supplements, took some out that weren't doing as much as I thought, but then really added in high doses of omega-3 fish oil on the Brain MD, Brain and Memory Power Boost. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of lab work after, which I've never done besides just full lab work from the doctor that I went to. So I looked at a lot of different things. My vitamin D was a little bit lower than we expected, and testosterone was relatively high. I think it was 1100 at the 0 to 900 scale.
Wow. So someone who's had multiple traumatic brain injuries, that's unusual.
Yeah.
That's what we were really interested in. And then to see my free T3, I think, was a little low, but I was still learning a little bit more about that with my eating patterns and things. But for the most part, everything was
that could have been from the head injury too,
despite what we expected from the traumatic brain injuries and tumors. So just adding in some supplements like that. I'm also using the Dopa Plus supplement because learning with me and ADHD and prefrontal cortex deficiency and blood flow and energy has me seeking out stimulants all the time, and makes sense why I can flip and spin at the same time within 2 seconds and know where I am.
Right.
But also hinders me in other areas. So it wasn't too many changes that I wasn't already doing. It was more just like getting detailed lab work and detailed supplements.
And so fine-tuning.
And what about hyperbaric oxygen? Did he recommend that for you?
Yes. I need to follow up with, I forget his name, that Gigi connected me with to reach out about getting that sort. Because there was a debate a little bit about hyperbaric oxygen and the 4 tumors I still have. and that being an issue, but I think we're being on the side it may not be an issue. So that's the next step is getting the hyperbaric oxygen, which I've never done before. So
Yeah, I would for sure. I'd check with your neurosurgeon, see if he has a take on it. But we've seen hyperbaric oxygen significantly increase blood flow to the brain. And what do you think the percentage of ADD in BMX bikers?
Maybe I'm good. I just got to leave on that 5% for the one-offs. But yeah, it's up there.
It's I would suspect because in a way, in order to do some of the tricks you've done, that you have to have not impulsive because I to do what you've done and not die, you have to be pretty disciplined, but to want to do that,
excitement seeking for sure.
To want to do that, it's sort of like jumping out of a helicopter.
So I'm going to assume they probably told you need to like not get your head rattled much anymore if you want your brain to be good.
Yeah, and it was 2 months ago that we had the scan, and we go back in October for a 6-month follow-up scan. So I decided to take that whole 6 months off of riding because although I don't compete anymore, I'm still very able to maintain that level of riding, and I enjoy it. But now I'm like, all right, for my own health, of course, but then also so we don't mess up the results. Let's take some time.
So now it gives you something to shoot for, right? But
I'm in a new movie called Quiet Explosions, and one of it goes through 3 of our patients, and one of them, Sean Dollar, is a world record holder for big wave surfing, and 62-foot wave,
crazy.
And he did some things between his first scan and his follow-up scan, but his follow-up scan wasn't better, which made him and I really ramp up his treatment. And he's just been so grateful. For him, it was hormones that he really got dramatically better after that. So the next scan is just what it is based on what you're doing. Our hope, obviously, is it's better. But if it's not, it just teaches us, okay, we need to be serious, even more serious about what we can do to rehabilitate your brain.
Well, and one thing that no one talks about, and this is the neurosurgical ICU nurse in me, I've taken care of multiple people, actually several people who, one was motocross, but 2 BMX bikers who broke their necks. They had helmets on, but they don't protect you from compression fractures, right? So when you land on your head can snap backwards, or you can land and it can actually do a compression fracture if you go straight down. And one was a quadriplegic, one had to wear a halo. So they don't protect the neck, huh?
Was one of them Stephen Murray?
I don't remember. This was a long time ago.
In 2007, I was there at the event where he landed on the back of his neck, broke his spine. He's been for the most part, head down, paralyzed.
But this was like 16 years ago. So, so it was a long time ago.
All right. When we come back, in fact, what was the question that you wanted everybody to ask?
So if you have struggled with something you've heard about your health and it's really, you took a big hit from it, what have you struggled with, and how can you now turn that around and become better? So with the information you've heard, we want to hear from you. What have you really struggled with? I know when you heard cancer, you said your world just began to collapse. They told you might die. What kind of news did you get that really, did you fall? You fell flat on the mat, right? Like I talk about in martial arts. And how can you get back up? How can you now make that become purposeful with that? Or how can you at least turn it around and, become better with that? Go to brainwarriorsway.com, leave us a message, or you can tag one of us on Instagram or Facebook. So Tana Amen or Daniel Amen, leave us a message. We want to hear from you. We want to read it. We love your questions. So we want to talk to you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're here with Josh Perry. And before we get into it, what is the one thing you've been struggling with that you need to overcome? And what one idea did you get from this series of podcasts? Post them on any of your social media channels, hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast.
I learned one thing. What did you say? Are you on self or on purpose? I love that. That's what I learned. This is really good. You've been really great. This is
So
fantastic.
post that
Yeah.
on Tana Amen.
Yeah.
Hashtag
I'm actually going to post that.
brainwarriorsway.com. You
gonna
can
post that
actually
and
learn
tag you.
more about Josh at Josh Perry, Perry, BMX.com, Josh Perry, BMX.com. He's a speaker. He's also a ketogenic consultant, brain tumor survivor, articulate, passionate. We're so grateful to have you with us.
What are you on Instagram?
Josh Perry BMX, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn.
So it's just Josh Perry?
BMX.
Josh Perry BMX. Okay.
Josh Perry's taken, so I gotta have a call with
Yeah,
Instagram
BMX. Okay.
And I didn't know about the keto consultant. My granddaughter, Emmy, when she was 5 months old, started having wicked seizures. In fact, in one day, she had 160 of them.
Wow.
And my daughter texted the videos to me, and it was like she was being electrocuted. And they wanted to put her on a medicine that was $26,000 a dose, that had more side effects than you can imagine, including wiping out your immune system.
Completely.
And I'm like, well, what about the ketogenic diet? It decreases seizure frequency in children by 50%. And the doctor laughed at me, so I fired him.
Well, I knew
don't
that.
like it when people laugh
that went
at me.
south the minute that you said, "Do you read?"
And she's been basically seizure-free for 7 years. And
Yeah, there's like 70 studies.
now, I'm not a fan of the ketogenic diet for everyone, because I'm a huge fan of plants and colorful fruits and vegetables. But for some people, especially with things like brain tumors, for
Seizure.
for people who have ADD, it can be really helpful.
For focus.
For people who have OCD, it actually makes them more OCD because they don't have the carbs that turn into serotonin. But it's fascinating, and I'm always interested in the science behind that. But let's talk more about some of the lessons you've learned and some of the questions you might have for Tana and I about diet or rehabilitating brain trauma, whatever is on your mind.
Yeah, for sure. So first, I would love to get your perspective on what Ryan and I did with our third scan using exogenous ketones. And I remember everyone in the office saying, "Oh, we're not sure. Everyone's on the fence that we're going to see a change now because this trait versus state." And we were just like, "All right, well, we still want to try because Dr. Ryan Lowry, his research is ketogenic diet and supplements." So, and then me, I got into it. The third diagnosis, they're like, "Yeah, we think you have a genetic disorder called neurofibromatosis." And I was like, "Man, neurofibromatosis or genetic or epigenetics." I learned about that in brain. So let's I've been eating high fat, low carb. Let's try out the ketogenic diet. 100%. Got a glucometer. Boom. And then after 2 years, now there's been no progression. And after I left competition in 2017, I was like, well, how do I provide for myself? I'm turning down sponsors. I'm not competing anymore. Well, let's help people make some changes. And my buddy Miles, we started out as a client and working with me over a year ago. He had 3 to 5, sometimes 7 seizures a day after 2 years of multiple brain surgeries, and he was on 12 different medications. Now they want to cut him up again. And so him and his mom reached out, and I was like, "Hey, I'm not a doctor. I coach people through this just to make lifestyle changes. I'm here to help, but you got to understand that I can't guarantee." And
When you did the keto scan, did you do it at rest or during concentration?
during concentration.
Okay. So I have up your concentration, your regular scan, and the keto scan actually dropped blood flow for you, actually pretty significantly.
Is that in the prefrontal as well?
Yes.
So our doctor was trying to understand. He's like, "Well, it dropped here, but it improved other areas." So I'm not really sure how to explain it. That's why I wanted to ask you about that.
Your limbic brain went really up, but you tend, so when you concentrate, it's not a typical ADD scan. When you concentrate, your frontal lobes actually activate. Compared, let's see, this is baseline. You see this? And we can show this on the podcast. And this is concentration. So do you see how much more
Oh.
activity there?
Yeah, that is unusual.
And
So it gets
and
better,
you
not
see
worse,
here,
when you concentrate.
But on the ketogenic scan,
It dropped.
It drops.
And it doesn't do
and
that
his
for everybody.
cerebellum drops
Because typically
too.
we recommend a higher protein diet for people with ADD because it does help them focus. But there are some people who it sort of is reverse, where if they increase in attention, you're kind of reversing. So
Yeah.
that's not
So
the
at
typical?
least for that moment in time, it doesn't look like it improved the health of your brain much.
But we're
Which I mean, just is what
And here's
it
the
is.
thing. Here's the thing, Josh. And you probably learned this at IIN. We're not into diets of any kind because the first three letters in the word diet are die. So we're into individualized healthcare, right? That's why we run your numbers when you come in. I will never tell someone keto is good or bad. I will never tell someone being a vegan is good or bad, even though we see it's not as good for most people, but it can be great for some people if they're willing to supplement. I will never tell someone that being a caveman is good or bad. It really depends on you. It's you as an individual, what's missing in your profile. What do you need to supplement with? So it really is very individual. And that's why and sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error. So yeah, it's very individual.
How do you feel when you're on a ketogenic diet?
Feel 10 times better than before.
And that's a big piece of it.
Yeah.
So-
But I also eat real food now. And so
Well, that's a big
I'm
piece of it.
taking the state, here and there from taking exogenous ketone supplements or fasting or just the way I eat. I don't eat starch or sugar for the most part. But then there are times where I have sweet potato or berries or I overeat nuts that day or nut butter. So it's like, and even like my cheat meal that I talk about, which isn't even regularly to be a cheat meal. I don't like saying that. It's real food still. It's,
Right. You're not going out and pigging out on, donuts and
not
French
like I
fries.
used to go to, McDonald's and, get a milkshake from somewhere down the road. Like it's like real food.
Right.
Costco has a new donut cake.
Oh God.
I just saw that in the news this morning. Other questions?
So, like I said before, when I posted the video of Dr. Ali explaining the whole helmet and concussion thing and how helmets really not only, but they protect mostly against skull fractures and not so much the soft, buttery brain that we have.
Yep.
I got a lot of flashback from the BMX community thinking I'm advocating about wearing a helmet anymore, when really it was to get an awareness of how detrimental hitting your head can be, whether you get knocked out or not, get concussion or not, and how we can prevent future damage through lifestyle.
So-
it doesn't have to be, a helmet, but like mindset, nutrition, exercise.
So think of this. Why do people get arrested for shaken baby syndrome?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if you have a helmet on or not. When your brain shakes, even if you didn't slam it into something, just the shaking when you're constantly, if it's getting jostled around really heavily, and when you hit something, it really gets jostled. It goes back and forth. Okay, you get a coup contre coup type of movement going.
And most people don't know that. When I played football when I was in high school, I thought that protected me. And so you could hit someone as hard as you wanted to.
Thinking you were protected, but it matters.
But the brain is not anchored in your skull.
Right.
And so
it's
when
jostling.
it stops, like if you're on a bike and you fall and all of a sudden your brain stops, it then bounces inside your skull.
Like shaken baby.
And I often say if God would have used me as a consultant, I would have put bumper guards around some of those sharp bony ridges in the skull.
You would have done many things differently. We know.
You just needed a consultant, that's all.
Okay, let's not go there. So you're going to be God's consultant. Okay. So anyways, so that's one of the things. But what I love that you say is that if people are going to do brain damaging sports, okay, football's not going away, right? BMX is not going to go away because people love it. It's exciting. People will watch it. And as long as that's going to happen, it's not going to go away. So if that's going to be the case, then at least be on a brain rehabilitating program the whole time, all the time, not once in a while, not after you get hurt. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And looking at
that's what Ryan talks about too. He's like, man, like every NFL athlete, hockey athlete should have exogenous ketones rather than the sugary Gatorades they have in their water bottles.
For sure.
At least get some of the benefits of the neuroprotective benefits while they're competing, or have they hit their head? Because that's what my real passion for the ketogenic diet and exogenous ketones comes a lot from Dr. Dom and Ryan's work, looking at glucose impairment when you hit the brain, or when you hit your head and the brain becomes impaired to utilizing glucose. And like all these things. So my other question I actually had for you guys was, I would love to be able to have Ryan and I chat with you guys someday about our passion for ketogenic supplements and the diet for brain health and optimization. And like I said, this is what I want to say before, I look at it as a tool or a lifestyle. Because a lot of people are like, how do you stay keto all the time? I'm like, I don't. Like, it's just the majority of the time by my choices. But then, I'm going to have some sweet potatoes. I'm going to have some berries. I'm going to have some nuts. Or I'm going to go on a trip to Italy and maybe I'll indulge a little bit one meal. That's the thing. Right. It's not vacation indulgence. It's
right.
One meal.
It's one thing.
I have a glass of wine. Like,
that's what we say.
It's all about, it's just like that lifestyle piece. And that's something I love sharing. But I want to see if you guys would be into one day having Ryan and I chat with you guys specifically. Well, we got all our questions, so we're more prepared for that. But really just seeing your perspective, and maybe we can collaborate with his facility, the Applied Sports Performance Institute in Tampa, and you guys and do some stuff. We can test me. I don't care.
But, we'd be happy to do that. I love this quote by Drew Carey: "Eating crappy food is not a reward; it's a punishment."
Yeah. See, that's how I think of it.
And so when I do the right things, I feel good about myself.
Right.
And now, just given what I know, when I do the wrong things because I've gone too long without eating, or I'm stressed, or a past habit gets triggered, then it really irritates me. And it irritates me because I love myself, because I want to live a long time. I want to be healthy. I want to be at the weight I want to be. I want my numbers to be great.
But it all goes back to that labeling and what we talked about before with how you language. So if the cupcake, people are like, but I don't want to be deprived. But if you think of the cupcake as the deprivation, because this being here with you is purpose, right? That's, I'm vibrant, I'm healthy, I get to be here with you, helping people. Then this cupcake becomes deprivation. It's all about how you think of things.
The cupcake is a weapon of mass destruction.
Same with you. So, if we have the priority of our brain health, it's like, why say things like, oh, well, I feel fine now, and I got to die somehow. Like, I hear that all the time, and I'm like, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but your perspective is so off because you're torturing yourself. And like,
it's just
so
kind of
hard
sad.
to not be judgmental in that aspect. It's like, love your brain some more so you can love yourself.
It's not about how you die, it's about how you live.
Yeah.
So
great. Well, you can learn more about Josh Perry at joshperrybmx.com. You can also follow him on Instagram, Josh Perry BMX. We are so grateful for
really
your time and for your passion and allowing us to tell your story, your expertise. Thank you so much. And for our listeners, what is that one experience that you've had to overcome, or that you are currently overcoming?
Yeah, what made you collapse?
What one thing have you learned from this week of podcast that you can apply to your life?
And are you on self or are you on purpose? I love that.
Post it on any of your social media channels, hashtag Brain Warriors Way Podcast. Also go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. Leave us a review, leave us questions. We're so grateful that you're a brain warrior. This is the Brain Warriors Way Podcast.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen Clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com, or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.